Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about the anacondas again. So I know many topics of this in the past. Somebody asked me to do a newer, updated topic on this, and I'm seeing a lot of people getting into the green anacondas. I'm not an expert by any means, but I've owned them for the last 3 years, and hopefully my, some experience could help you guys out if you're new to them or getting curious about them. So this is a male, born in 2021 in December. And he is doing very well. They've noticed that he is smaller than what the females were. The females do in general stay a bit smaller than the females as they grow up and into adulthood. You probably will see a male 9 to 12 feet depending on how you feed it and the genes that are connected with it. And then the females will most likely see 16 to 17 feet. I think that's really the max that you would see on a green anaconda. They do not really get much bigger than 18 feet. And I seriously doubt you would ever find a 20-foot plus one. So all these snakes are fed very conservatively, and they're not pumped with food. They're not made to be monster snakes really fast. I hope to breed them, but I'm not pumping them food to breed or to have big snakes. So you guys can do that if you would like, but I'm just feeding mine on a regular schedule. And when they get big on their own times, then they're just going to get big. So depending on how you guys want to feed them, you guys will see a different variety of sizes with them as they're growing. But like I said, this is the male. And as you can see, you might be able to see these white spots all over them. So I've noticed with the younger anacondas, not really seeing this with my older one, but when they're younger, they kind of all have gone through this. And I do use tap water. I use tap water for every snake that's in the room, and I have almost 60 of them. I've only noticed this with the anacondas. So I do believe this is the scale. There's an issue with the scale. So I think there's scale blisters or water blisters. So I've noticed that when they like to soak for days at a time, and then I've noticed this started happening. The older one doesn't really soak that much, only when she needs to go to the bathroom. So I'm limiting the time that they're allowed to be in the water, kind of like a parent with a kid. So you can't spend that much time in the water. I'll put the water in for a couple days. They can drink it, they can soak, and I take the water out for a couple days. So it's like 2 in, 2 out, or 3 in, 3 out, something like that. Doesn't bother them. They get enough hydration, and then I keep the totes or the enclosures very damp, very moist. This one is in just a basic tub. And with a lot of Refuge chip, which is soaking wet, so they can get the humidity still, and then I do spray it down so they can drink. So I'm limiting them to soak time basically, so this is not happening. As they get older, obviously they're going to get big. I do have them in different enclosures, and we'll see which ones, all the different enclosures for them. So this one does like to bite. Shockingly, has not bitten me yet. I put a lot of time into these animals, daily interactions, and I think that's a huge key for them. Their temperament can be hit or miss when you buy them, but I think if you put a lot of time and a lot of effort into them, you can have a phenomenal snake with a great attitude. This one I'm working with, he seems to be doing very well. He will randomly bite me, and I cannot have this one with the other snakes. If I get him out with the other anacondas, then he bites basically. But the other two females, I can get them out at the same time, no problem. So I'm gonna put him back, and then I'm going to show you guys how the females are. So one of the things that I've noticed, we can go into feeding as well because it kind of is the topic of the smaller one. So the bigger ones have no problems eating. If you guys are buying these snakes, be prepared depending on who you're buying them from, and make sure you get a definite answer on how they're eating. So I was very lucky buying this one from a very reputable breeder, and he kept them long enough, months after they were born, to establish a good feeding and meal times for them. So the other two did not. So if you guys are having very stubborn or very picky anacondas, I understand that. I went through the stress on 2 of them. Luckily, I didn't have to do this on this one. So the other 2 I was told on rats, they were not. So it took weeks and months and wasted rats and wasted money and a lot of energy and stress on figuring out why they weren't eating. They weren't eating dead rats or live rats. And then I got live quail. And then I got live chicks, and then that was like, they love that. So apparently live quail, or even probably dead quail, is the key that I have found to feeding your baby anacondas. So if you drop them in there, you should not have any problems. You can scent them with fish. I've heard that works. It did not work for me. I've heard you can scent rats with fish or rats with birds. That didn't work for me either. So dropping in a live quail, a couple-day-old quail or just a one-day-old chick. One-day-old chicks are very big, but they'll eat it. It looks like there's a massive lump in there, but you should not have any problems after that. And once they're established on feeding, they should be okay on swapping over to rats. So it just depends on the snake. One of my females took almost a year to swap over, and then one of them took about 5 months. And then obviously the new one, the male that I have, swapped over very, very quickly. So let's check out the females. Okay, so this is a 2020 female, and she's in a Christmas tree tote. And we'll talk about heating because I know you guys are probably curious on how I'm heating these random plastic totes all over the room. I keep the room at about 85 degrees with an oil heater. I have random snakes everywhere in totes and in racks and stuff like that. So the boas, ball pythons, the anacondas, and the berm. I've had no issues with them at all and running ambient heat at 85-ish degrees with just an oil heater, which is phenomenal because it really lowers the costs of your heating bill. And you don't have to consistently worry about a lot of heat pads, a lot of heat tape, or a bunch of electronical stuff that can fail. So if that's something that you guys can do on a spare room, I would highly suggest it. But if you guys want to heat any other way, you guys can do that as you prefer. So she's getting larger. She did have a medical issue when she was younger, but she bounced back from that and is doing very well. So that might have slowed her growth just a little bit. But she's on medium to large rats, no problems, every 2 weeks. And I'll slow her food down as she gets larger. And if I'm noticing that she's getting too thick, too fat, or having fat pockets anywhere, but really by the time they have fat pockets, I think it's a little too late. But she's doing very well. I hold them a lot. They get a lot of exercise. So it's not like they're just in their tubs eating and relaxing, picking up a ton of unnecessary weight. But this is a beautiful girl. You can see that the male was a lot darker than this girl. Anacondas do come in a variety of shades of green, and sometimes they'll change colors as they get older. So you could get a dark baby and it gets very light. You get a light green and it turns very dark green as they get older. But as you can see, I do hook them out just so I don't have any issues and that there's no problems at all. But the temperament on them are phenomenal. Like I said, you have to work with them. If you get bit, you get bit. But just put the time into them and they are definitely very, very rewarding snakes. You can probably see some bumps all over her or marks. She had water blisters as well. But I did have a very large tote in there with water and she was soaking a lot. It's just something that the anacondas do since they're semi-aquatic. But we just have to watch out for them and make sure that the water blisters are not that big of an issue. So I've really not heard too many people talking about the water blisters, but I've been running into that issue quite often. So we'll try to put her back. We'll look at the bigger female, and it's not that the water is dirty. They're not sitting in dirty water. That's another thing that I can come up with another topic is these snakes are high maintenance. So compared to all the other species of snakes that I do have, these are the messiest. They go to the bathroom consistently, daily messes throughout the week. I basically change the water 3-4 times a week because most of the snakes just do one big bathroom. They just go poop and then that's it and then they're good. But it seems that the anacondas poop every single day. And then when you give them fresh water, they go in the water and they poop even more. So that's just one thing that I have learned. So if you want an anaconda, just be prepared that, from my experience, you're going to be changing the cages, the bedding, the water consistently with them. I'm using ReptiChip in both of these. I've noticed on the big anaconda, since it's a 9x3, instead of spending $80 on ReptiChip every single time I clean out this cage, I just go to local hardware store, Lowe's or Home Depot, and I just get 100% cypress mulch. That's basically what any other bedding is for snakes, and it's 100%. There's no chemicals or added dye or anything like that. It's like $4 or $5 for a bag. Buy 2 bags and I'm good. So cost of that is down. The chunks are pretty big, so that's why I only use it for the bigger anaconda. And we can go ahead and look in here. So One thing that I do normally is I do keep a lot of these totes and stuff up off the ground, higher up, as you can see around the room, because obviously hot air rises. The one thing that I do on this cage, that's the 9x3x2. I wish I did make this a little bit higher. It would have made filling the water area a lot easier. But just know the higher the cage, the more difficult it is to get the heat down to where it needs to be. So in here I do have a radiant heat panel for in the wintertime. The floor gets cold, the base gets cold, and I do have 100 water I need to re-put back up there. She knocked it down. So I will in the summertime run heat for this cage just because it's on the floor. You know what I mean? So I don't want this to be cold in here. But if you guys are wanting big, so the glass is a little dirty, so we'll go in here. So if you guys are wanting big water areas, I would suggest getting a concrete mixing tub, which is what this is, fairly cheap. And I think it can hold like 10 gallons of water. So this is 2019 Anaconda Pop-Tart. She's almost 8 feet. And depending on your state, these might be illegal or you might need permits. So if you're in the state of Ohio, you need to fill out a permit right when they hit 12 feet. I think you have a couple months after that. But at 12 feet, then they start accepting applications for your permit. Now, if you get denied, they already know you have it, so that sucks. But I've never heard of anybody get denied. You have inspectors come into the state, not really inspectors, but they come in from the state. They check your room, they check the enclosure to make sure it's a good enough size, that you got locks on them and stuff like that, which I do have locks, but I don't really need them. But they just want to make sure that the animal's in good health and has a good cage for the permit. So she's eating rabbits, very large rats, guinea pigs, and stuff like that every 3 to 4 weeks. So again, I have seen 3-year-old anacondas that are already at 12 feet and super thick. But again, if you feed them twice a week or if you're pumping them full of food, you're going to get a big animal. Probably not the healthiest, but again, people do that for breeding purposes so you can get money out of them fast. That's not my angle on them. These are phenomenal pets. I would like to keep them as long as I can. And that's basically it, is just a pet. Beautiful pets. The temperament on these are phenomenal. I can take her out. I do hook her out because I don't want any issues. They're super strong. Even this girl right here, she's very strong, all muscle. So you guys have to be aware of that as you get older. But I would suggest that if you guys are into boas, you want something a little bit bigger, but you don't got like retics, rocks, or berms, the Anaconda is where it is. So they're not that expensive. I think you can get a female right now for about $2,000. I think a male is around $1,300-ish, depending on who you're buying them from. And if you buy them locally at local shows from non-big time names, you can get them for a lot cheaper. But just realize that you got to put a lot of time into them, a lot of maintenance, a lot of cleaning. But other than that, there's really no difference in keeping them than any other snake that you might regularly have, ball pythons or boas. And that's it. So super quick. If you guys have any other questions, let me know. Hopefully I didn't miss on anything. So the feeding, just get them on a good schedule. Don't overfeed them because they do get big fast. They can get fatty fast. Any type of heat in general is good for them. And if you get one that bites, then you guys can calm those down pretty easily. And so that's it. And I'll see you guys on the next video.